All right, welcome back, everybody, to episode 8 on Monday, January 12th. Thanks for tuning in. Um, I'm starting to figure out the structure for the show for the rest of the month. I think, well, at least for the next week and a half, I think I'm just going to keep kind of entering into a whole bunch of different areas of conversation and just like spreading a really wide net to then reel in later and make sense of later. So over the next few episodes, I want to talk about like food and health and nutrition and the American food system. That'll be like just one episode. So they want it's just I just want to scratch the surface of a bunch of different areas that we haven't really talked about yet. And that's all we've been doing since this started, is starting to scratch a bunch of surfaces. I want to talk about that. I'd like to talk about sexuality and specifically dating apps and romantic love. And the romantic love thing will have a lot of overlap with the following episode. I don't know what order I'll do it in, but an episode on music and popular music. So basically, music used for healing purposes, music used for social palliative purposes, just a bunch of different ways music can be used and ways that it is used in our society. Because I don't know. I'll save it for the music episode, but I think a lot of people listen to music to their own detriment, and I think music has a lot of potential for inspiring the mind and communicating things to other people across time. And I think it's a very powerful medium that we have access to, and yet, despite the fact that we have access to tons of it through the internet, we have access to just like a huge mass of recorded media, and yet most people find themselves listening to, depending on how you view it, automated playlists that don't really probe that depth very much. And yeah, so that'll be a conversation. And the dating apps one, it's just, I think everyone's kind of like, dating websites have been around for a really long time, but I feel like Tinder's been around for at least 11 plus years at this point. And I've noticed over the past year that a lot of people across age groups, because my like late 20s friend group notice, I don't know, it Tinder evolves depending on how old you are, no matter what, or there's like a stratification for your experience using a dating app based on your age. But I've noticed like the general feelings about these dating apps has gone down for all ages, especially over this past year. It feels like there's been kind of a turning point where a lot of people are increasingly resenting it. And yeah, so, and what else? I want to talk about the family and the formation of the personality, which has a lot to do with the family. So that'll be another episode. I don't know, just a bunch of, just going to keep spreading out, and then we can collect it all later to make sense of. And I thought I was going to just jump into that today, but I actually feel like talking about something else. I'd like to talk about dissociation and mental ability and mental clarity. And this has been prompted, I think I've been wanting to talk about it more because over the past few days, or over the past week, I've been hanging out with one of my friends, and he's been memorizing poetry for the first time. And I'm also trying to do some more of that. I've had little stints where I will do that, and I've found it helpful, but then you kind of you forget how powerful it really is. So we've been having a few conversations about what, I don't know, just the potential of the mind and how you can get really comfortable in these kind of dark areas where you're not using your minds to its fullest extent. And when you're in that sort of like, it's not like a dark area of the mind. I mean more like a dark mode of experience, like say a depressed period of your life. Like everything does seem less bright, less interesting, and it's harder to associate. So yeah, I guess I'll just get right into it. Dissociation is a word I've heard a lot more over, I don't know, over the past 10 years. I feel like it was a word I didn't hear until I was 18, probably. But it was an experience I'd had ever since I was a child, periodically at least. Or I think it has personal significance to me because I think it is the primary coping mechanism I developed, and it was a very prominent, over the years where I had depression, it was a very prominent feature of that depression that I would be dissociating. So I kind of want to, sometimes people will spell dissociation as disassociation, and that's not how I spelled it in the title, but I think that is that is kind of how I think about it in my mind. I think about this disconnection of the associative capacity of the mind. And that is something, when that happens to you over time, or when you become dulled in that way and there's less and less association, I guess before I get into it, I'll define, maybe not define, but talk about association, because, and my sense of association kind of comes from mathematics and parentheses, the associative property, but I think of it in terms of movement when I'm thinking about it in my mind. When you're associating, it's like you think of a concept, say peppermint, and then you associate, like that leads to a memory, that leads to you smelling like a piece of candy, or like an essential oil, or just like having peppermint tea, which is, I have some mint tea here. And your mind can be prone to different degrees of association. And I found when I was depressed and when I was getting increasingly depressed that, I mean, I didn't have any language for understanding any of this, but I thought my mind was becoming, or I realized in retrospect, my mind was becoming extremely disassociative. My associative capacity, my capacity for my mind to move freely and freely associate concepts with each other, like start thinking about memories based on something someone said, that got really rigidly locked down. And that sort of relates to last week. I was talking about how sometimes I feel frozen, or like a type of executive dysfunction. I'm trying to, I moved to the mic again because it's quiet up here today, but I've noticed that if I do block the mic with my hand even a little bit, it will cut the audio. So I have to try to be careful about that. Let me know if that is noticeable. So, got a little off topic, or not off topic, but I lost my train of thought. So yeah, associativity is that ability to freely exist in your mind. I think of it related to the concept of interiority too. Like if you have a strong, I don't know, I never talk about this out loud, I guess, so I don't know what grammar to use for these concepts, but if you have like a strong interiority, like a strong interior world, I think of it as like a stable architectural structure within which you're able to explore the memories and concepts and lexicon and symbols and desires and everything that goes on in your mind. I think of it as like the the structure where that is able to take place. And when one is depressed, you can start to lose that interior structure, and it doesn't feel like a structure at all. It doesn't feel like, it still feels like a place in my experience, but it feels like I don't know, more like a very foggy swamp where you aren't able to like easily, you aren't able to easily make sense of, or you just aren't, you have no freedom of movement in your own soul. Like you aren't able to freely really think about who you've been in your past, or like how significant some friendships may be to you, or what someone is really saying when they're saying it, or what something really means when you're reading it, because it all gets very dull. You can think of, like, I don't know, I remember like early 2000s SSRI commercials where everything is like grayscale, or like maybe even kind of like foggy, blurry, and then they start taking the SSRI and it's like, whoa, it's in color again. To move my rug. Yeah, and that's not what I hear from most people who have experience taking SSRIs, but the concept is relevant, and that is how it becomes alluring to take that, because that is kind of a fair representation of what it's like to become dissociated. And beside this, I kind of want to put the concept of, yeah, someone in the chat says, well, microcosmos for the concept, but also nothing springs forth. Your psyche feels barren, not fruitful. And I think that, yeah, the more words there are to describe this is helpful, because it's not the same for everyone, and but it's similar enough that we can narrow it down and talk about it. So yeah, I kind of want to put these two concepts beside each other, of desensitization and dissociation, and their positive forms are the sensations, the senses, and associations. And we've been talking a lot about desensitization on the show, and I think I guess I don't know exactly how I relate these things conceptually. That's kind of the work of the show, is we'll figure out how to put these things together. But yeah, with desensitization, I think of like, there's a few forms, but one is to just get used to what is happening, just to get like accustomed to the noise of the city, and then you don't sense the noise of the city, or accustomed to every time you go outside, it's cement and you see dog shit everywhere, but it doesn't bother you because you've adapted in a way. And so those things don't have a sensory intensity that is striking you, because things like shit or like vomit on the sidewalk, which, not to be gross, but that's my experience of city life, is it's kind of hard to go for a walk without witnessing that. And yeah, but if you are able to sort of naturally desensitize yourself to those things, they're not as striking, because things like I don't know. I mean, I don't want to just keep saying shit, but there's things that gross us out for a reason, and there's an intensity there that we're able to process like for a reason, and that relates as well to disassociation, because say you see things like that and you lock it down. You don't start thinking about all the other unpleasant things you've seen in your life, which is what a highly associative mind might do. You might just go on a journey, like link to link to link, association to association to association. And so yeah, there are uses for these things. Anyway, so yeah, I guess I don't really know how to put those things in relation to each other. They kind of bleed into each other in my mind. They're clearly related. And yeah, so we're kind of talking about the nebulous territory that both of those things take place in. Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, I have a few things to talk about with this in mind. Oh well, that was sort of just to set up the concept of dissociation that we're going to talk about. But I'd also like to set up um, the the positive exploration of the possibilities of the mind. Where, so to get back to my friend who's memorizing poems, that's something that relates to the concept we laid out last week, where it's like you are in process, and the equipment that you're using to do your thinking changes over time. So the context I brought this up in last week was, say you use a phone every day and you use the internet every day, or say you use a phone specifically every day when you wake up and every day before you go to bed, and you've been doing that for a few years now, then you don't know who you are without the phone. And this is a concept I was hyphenating, where it's like you with the phone, you without the phone. And that concept can be broadened entirely, because there is no actual like abstraction of the you there. It's like technically you're always unique. You're always processing everything. And we're just abstracting this a little bit to talk about like you with the phone, you without the phone, even though really it's ultimately you are like a singular experience of, say, consciousness or being, rather. So, yeah, so to bring that into play, my friend has been memorizing poem, or he's been reading every day for a while now, more intensely than previously. And that, and now combined with the memorizing of poetry every day for a few days, he's reflecting on a period where he was not doing things like that, where he was more in a depressed period of his life, and how we're thinking about how you can wind up in those periods and think it's kind of hopeless and or over, and you can't get out of it. But that's because the you that you're working with, like the equipment that you're using to think, has gotten really locked down, really dissociative, desensitized, depressed, perhaps thinking negatively in terms of self-worth. So actually thinking like hostile thoughts to the psyche, which is something we'll talk about another time. And so when that's your equipment, you're never going to think about the things that actually are going to motivate you to want to live in the world, or broaden your experience, or help other people, or do what you really want to do. And so here we have some concrete evidence of changes to that effect. And I've gotten some nice messages from people who appreciated specifically the phone stream that I did, and have put their phones in grayscale and are trying to figure out who they are without the phone. And I'm glad that that was helpful. And more than understanding who we are without the phone, I also want to explore, well, how mentally alive can we become? Because I think the phone sort of deadens us. It weakens our capacity for thought. I think of all those, like, I mean, I don't know I don't know if there is actually more than one, or if it was just one movie. I never saw it. The movie where it's like, we're only using like 10% of our brain, but this pill will let you use 100% of your brain. And it's like that. That is basically what's happening, but you don't need to take a pill. But everyone is getting like so just like beaten into the lowest like 10% of their brain, their brain processing power, or brain imaginative capacity, intellectual capacity, and we're just getting really used to it. So I'd like to explore ways of trying to expand that. And I sell books on the street in New York, and I'm reminded of sometimes I've sold. So every time I see this book out in the world for $1, I'll get it because I like passing it around. It's a book called Neurobics, and it's like neural exercises, and I think it is written like in a way that is geared toward the elderly. Or I think that's the primary audience, not the only audience. And I've sold that book to some really young people, and like we do joke about it when they buy it, or like where it's just like, yeah, dog, like I'm fried. Like I need I need this. Like I'm just my brain is fried. And yeah, I don't know. That's just a funny story. But it's true. There is something to be said for desensitization. Someone says, "I wish I could have been as desensitized to say sirens as everyone else in this city." And yeah, it I guess that is true. And that is kind of where I'm that's maybe where I'm going with this whole thing actually. I wasn't thinking of it this way. I was kind of trying to think of a way to conceive it. So I'll try writing this down real quick just so I don't lose it. Um, to everyone else in the chat too, or to new people in the chat, I typically don't look at the chat until the monologue is over, just because it totally like in a way it actually it sort of dissociates me from whatever I was just thinking of, and I'm not able to like get back to it. Like obviously the thoughts are still right in my head and like primed to come out, but looking at the chat and like reading a conversation, it enters me into a social mode. And I think this is common to a lot of people, where when you're in the social mode, or like this is what a form of social anxiety can be, where when someone is around, suddenly you sort of have a heightened sense of adrenaline because you will need to interact with this person, or you are interacting with this person. And I think the adrenaline response has something to do with the intensity of a dissociative moment. So I guess just there's just like a spike of something in my being that prevents me from getting back on my train of thought. So I kind of avoid it unless I'm don't have something to talk about next anyway. Yeah, because that concept of like, okay, yeah, well, you can be a real, like, you can probably get your bag up in New York City if you're able to like block all this stuff out and just like grind at your job every day and like just live like that, and like block out and just not be bothered by those things. I don't like city life, or I don't like feeling totally enclosed or having that level of intensity just all the time, and it's something that I just can't even leave. I like to have some time outside of the stimulation, some time away from people, because of that social response that I have to just being around people. And yeah, but so that's like one version of adapting, and kind of what I'm interested in exploring by the end here is like, well, how, and I mean, this is a problem I've been trying to solve in my life for a long time, which is just like, how can I live in a way that leads to like optimal or maximal like mental aliveness and like mental imaginative and intellectual capacity, and then thus also like efficacy in the things that I care about getting done in this life. So there is sort of a mirror image in there. Anyway, I kind of am just weaving in here because or at least like, yeah, I did not prepare this as well as I would have liked, but that's in time. I think that will all work itself out. It's hard because it's hard in this current moment because it's like, I mean, I just have to trim things down because the world just feels so big of concepts to be talking about. But I think I just have to like trim it down, and then whatever shows up in the lecture shows up, and whatever doesn't can just be saved for later. But I think I just have to get better at drafting some maps that I would like to follow while I do these things. And all right, so I think, I mean, over the course of these episodes, I think it's become clear enough that our society does not value the interiority of the human being, and it is atrophying the interiorities at a mass scale. And you look at children coming up in the education system, and how, I mean, the education system's been screwed for a long time in terms of trying to actually get people to be mentally alive. That term stuck with me because it's I don't even know if it's a real Malcolm X quote, because you just never know. But it was a Malcolm X quote that's just like, he's talking about how reading, like learning how to read, finally gave him the desire to be mentally alive. And that's kind of, at the societal level, I feel like we are all depressed in some aspect of our lives, and it is preventing us from finding ways to live that help us actually think and be effective, and live in ways that we want to, and I don't know, not be impotent. I think the default is to be able to go into work and do your job, and then have really like low sensory awareness beyond anything related to that, and then just sort of entertain your way through the rest of life. Like, and when I say entertain, I kind of contrast it with boredom. Like, just sort of you avoid boredom in your leisure time, and that's kind of just how it goes, instead of having a positive thing to aspire to. So yeah, we've talked a lot about that, but I'll give a few examples here of interior experiences that I think are highly discounted in our society specifically. And first of all is dreams. I think dreams are actually very important to this life. I mean, we spend almost half our lives sleeping, and the main thing that we take away mentally from sleeping, aside from all of the physiological processes, and those physiological processes are important to our mental ability. I'll talk about the union of mind and body later, because it plays into freeing yourself from dissociation. You actually have to do things with your body, in my experience. But anyway, so dreams, like we may spend our days sort of desensitized and dissociated, and not really exploring the full mental capacity of our being. And then at night, like, finally your imagination is able to run wild for like, after being like in its cage all day in the dark, in its cage under the like bird bedtime blanket, you can't control it at night, so it actually just starts like spinning its wheels really fast, and just like I don't know, tearing shit up. I don't know what other people's dreams are like, but me and my friends talk about our dreams a lot, and it's like, it's pretty incredible what winds up in there. It really is the like storytelling capacity of the unconscious is amazing. And I think that in and of itself should be proof enough. Like, a lot of people think of their dreams as just nonsense, and I think some of it certainly is nonsense, just sort of the way that the imagination works. There's no necessary narrative to necessarily pull from everything that happens in a dream. So that's not what I'm saying. However, there are many clues about our lives that we can learn from dreams. Especially about things that we want, or things that we're afraid of, or things that are hurting us or confusing us, especially within social dynamics, some of that can be really processed by the unconscious. Because if you think evolutionarily, like dogs or like animals dream. If you've had a pet dog, you've probably seen it dreaming, like moving its body while it's asleep, and like just shaking its paw or something or making a sound. And so if you think of the human being evolutionarily, like language came along just somewhere along that line, but we've been telling ourselves stories in these symbols in our psyches for longer than that, just through dreams, if not in our waking life. So I think the I don't want to say technology, although I think you kind of could argue that it is a type of technology, but the that ability is like the real deal inside of us. It's not just like cranking out nonsense all the time. I think it's something to pay attention to, not pay too much attention to. I don't really think people should be like trying to do extreme dream analysis on every dream. Or rather, I only say that because that is like a way some people go with this, and I guess I'm trying to distance myself from that a little bit. But I think dreams are important, and I think dreams ought to be explored, and yet in our society it is a super undervalued, hardly acknowledged part of our lives. Like I've built up with my friends sort of a rapport for sharing dreams and talking about dreams, but I don't think a lot of people have that. And I mean, I didn't have it until we built it up and we started actually really seeing more and more interesting things coming out of there. So that's one. And then the other thing I wanted to sorry, it was a funny chat. Yeah, so another example of this in our society that is even more drastic, because dreams show up in I guess in like TV shows at the least. They're, and people do talk about them. But then there's these concepts of meditation and prayer, which feel very much like historical and remote concepts in everyday life when you're talking to people. And that's something where it's like, even if you're acknowledging the historical significance of meditation and prayer, or the remote significance of the fact that it still happens and there still are monks who achieve some extreme level of meditative ability, that is funny to me, I guess, because it begs the question that no one seems to be asking or answering in our society of like, so what is that? So what is meditation? So like what is he thinking when he's doing that? I am kind of just surprised by how little that comes up. And same thing with prayer, where people acknowledge that people pray. I feel like actually kind of the most frequent acknowledgement of prayer that I have heard in our society over my whole life has just been people kind of like making fun of the responsive thoughts and prayers. And that, I don't know, that aside, or I don't know, that would be a great time to basically ask like, what is prayer? What is thought? Or like, that person is already sort of, I don't know, someone ridiculing that sort of response might already be differentiating the two. And if they are differentiating the two, it's like, what are you defining prayer as? I think these are good questions. I think these are questions that are worth exploring with your friends. Like these are the sorts of conversations that are keeping us on one side of this bifurcation that's happening. Like we're heading into the second year of the second half of the decade. And this is going to be the decade of just like total cognitive destruction for many people in our society. And I think a lot, like part of my reason for starting this show is I want to help as many people not be on that side of it. And I also want to help myself not be on that side of it. I would like to try to go up the steeper slope and just like protect myself from the damage that is just like crushing our interiority and our abilities, all kinds of abilities. So yeah, so anyway, on that note with meditation and prayer, at the end of this I will do 2 little readings. I don't know if I'll one I might just show, because I was reading a little summary of Saint Teresa of Jesus of Avila. I was reading a little thing about her sense of the interior castle. I'll do a close up on this when I read it. But yeah, so she, I don't know, the whole thing is an incredible exploration of the concept of interiority with relationship to prayer specifically. And I also want to read a little bit of a Buddhist text that I've found helpful over the course of my life in trying to tune out all of the things that are like trying to destroy my intellectual capacity, and thus my physiological life. So yeah, and I guess I'm not even gonna like go to define meditation or prayer. It's just something that like I think really needs to be reckoned with, because they're obviously acknowledged as historical and remote concepts that happen, say, in monasteries or at church or just in the past. And if you acknowledge just the role of, say, prayer in medieval Europe, it's like what I want to ask. I just want to ask people, like, so what were they doing? And it's not, I don't want to ask because they don't believe. It's just like, I would just like the data. I just kind of like to hear what people think happens when you pray, or when you achieve some extremely deep level of meditative ability. So yeah, I'll keep moving along. This is definitely kind of a mess, but I'm live streaming and it's free. So hopefully I feel the pressure to get a lot more organized with this. I do feel the pressure, but it's a little hard for obvious reasons. Actually, for reasons I'll get into at the end of this, because it's related to this whole way of life and trying to carve out a way of life that actually allows me to focus on the things that I want to be focused on, instead of creating so much friction trying to swim upriver. Not to mix metaphors, because that's I guess it kind of is true. I guess there is I don't know. Yeah, so I guess I'll go back to, hang on one second. Okay, cool. Lots of people who want to talk about this stuff. And also, if you want to share any of this stuff in a way that's more permanent, like I'm not letting the chat replay happen on here, but oh yeah, you two are, I've been trying to get you two to hang out in person. I haven't been trying very hard, but we'll make it happen. But yeah, if anyone wants to share anything, feel free to share it in the comments of the video, because there it will remain to be seen by people who tune in later, and also it can turn into an actual conversational thing. All right. So yeah, and I won't go too deep into the negative side of this. I'll just try to stay on the positive side. But here's another example, because we've already given plenty of time. We've devoted plenty of time, not plenty, but we've devoted enough time to the concept of the flattening of our language, the fact that people are not really using language to its fullest capacity, not the speakers nor the listeners, and it creates, there's a sort of intense feedback loop occurring there with the media that we're using. So I'll just let that be. I'll let it be that the way that we are just expected to participate in our society and the way that children are being raised right now is to have a very shallow sense of the possibilities of language. Like, kids aren't really reading, kids aren't really writing. They're using ChatGPT to write. There's exceptions, but that is basically the rule, from the people I've been talking to. And yeah, so yeah, on this more positive side of it, thinking about my friend who's memorizing the poems, I want to just explore the imagination's relationship to language. And I'm not going to do that in depth. I just would like to point out that it is one of the most important relationships in our interior life that we have. And it's so important that it also lives in the exterior life as well, because that's how we communicate with other people. It's of pretty grave importance and of joyous capacity as well. It's not to be overlooked. So my friend, by reading difficult language every day that he was unfamiliar with, like older English, like 1700s English, and then by memorizing poetry, he's changing who he is, and he is modulating his equipment for thought. He's changing how he thinks about things. And that, in relation to him in the depressed period, it is like living in an entirely different world, because we understand the world only through our mind. We understand it through our senses, which we feel through the mind. And so when you are... And so I really want to emphasize that all these sorts of things in our lives mold our mind, which molds our world. And that is just like that is something to hold really close to your heart when we're in this very intense, stimulating, and fast environment, because it's so easy to get distracted and forget that, and then just get caught up in the action of the game and just sort of like what is going on around us or social gossip in the world. We just wind up trailing off and forgetting that what we let into us and for how long we let it in is going to change who we are and how we think, and thus the very worlds that we're in. So keep it close and try to, I don't know, just try to prepare yourself to choose. I guess let me think what I'm trying to say here. Because I think that concept is just very overlooked. I think people think that they are atomic, or like, I'm me, I have my soul, and I'm just moving through the world, and I'm bringing myself to the world, and I'm interacting with it, and I'll go on my phone and I'll play a game on the subway and I'll put it away, and that was just me playing a game. And that's, not to keep coming back to that example, but and I'll hold myself this particular way with all my workplace relations, and I'll drive my car an hour to work and an hour home every day, and I will be myself through it all. But really, I think we just have to be aware of how we're changing and how we get back to who I don't know how to phrase it, who we're meant to be, or who we would like to be, or who we are at the deepest level without that effect. That's something I kind of have to think about, is how to phrase that concept of the... I don't really want to say stuff like the fulfilled life, but I think you guys probably see what I'm saying here, which is like you can get carried away and molded into something alien before you know it, and we need to have a map back at all times. So I think that is what some of my other notes on here were about. Well, that's what the Buddhist reading will be about as well, is just how to get back, and how to sort of let those things like just pass by you, like how to stand in the river instead of getting carried away by the river, and just let it all move around you while maintaining yourself. So yeah, there's a few more things I can pull out here. Yo, um, cool. Okay, so I want to talk about dopamine a little bit, or motivation and dopamine. And I know this is I don't know. I feel like it's related to the associative question. So I had an experience the other day. I like chocolate a lot, but chocolate actually makes me dissociate, similar to caffeine. I'm sensitive to them in a way that seems to be kind of different to other people. I know people feel this effect to some degree, but coffee doesn't really like wake me up or help me think more clearly. I feel like it actually kind of, I mean, the energy thing, I feel like I barely notice, and then I feel like it kind of, it changes my mind. I feel like in certain ways it shuts down my mind, in certain ways it opens it. And anyway, but I do like how it tastes, so sometimes I'll drink it, but mostly I avoid it because um I don't need I don't need to increase how dissociated I am in my everyday life. So anyway, though, the other night I started reading this Saint Teresa of Avila summary, and it was really good. And but I was tired, and I was like, I kind of want to stay up and read this for a while. Like maybe I should eat some chocolate, but chocolate makes me dissociate. And so I was like, I don't know. Well, I guess I'll do that like motivation hack thing that people do or say you should do, where it's like, okay, well, I'll read for 30 minutes and then I'll have a piece of chocolate. And so then I started reading this thing, and of course this book it's about like how to like develop the most like intense and powerful like interior life with respect to prayer. Or she like has this conception of, she describes it as a castle, and there's like these different mansions getting closer and closer to the center of the castle, and we are like all way on the outside. And then as you get closer, she's just describing these more and more intense types of mental phenomena that you experience. And so I'm like, I set my alarm, my little like buzzer, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm supposed to read for 30 minutes and then have this chocolate. But now I'm suddenly reading this thing about how much potential there is in the interior mind. And I know that I live in this, like, I know I have a problem with motivation and with dopamine. So if I'm reading this and I actually care about this, I should actually just delay this reward indefinitely, and then like not even take the reward at the end, and I should just go to bed. And that should be the like ultimate exercise in dopamine control, or like some sort of dopamine reset. And I don't know. It's kind of just a funny story, because I was like, wow, this is kind of the the perfect thing to do, is like set up one of these like dopamine tricks, but then you read something that actually is like really motivating, where it's like, oh, I need to like break my slavery to the way that my current dopamine circuitry is set up. And I know I'm being reductive by relating this all to dopamine, but it actually is like a major player with this stuff, from what I've read anyway. And anyway, so I guess I don't feel equipped, but I do want to wire all these things together, like the desensitization, the dissociation, and then also this like dopamine, this like shared dopamine circuitry we have that is like compelling us to never be bored and to engage in the novelties and like do things that are bad for us. And also like weed is very popular now, and weed really is like a dopamine affecting drug as I understand it. I don't know. Well, we'll talk about weed another time. I guess that can be another one of the lectures over the course of this week and next week. I'll do one on like altered states of consciousness or like psychoactive substances or something. Because I think that is a reality that I mean the reality is that people are taking those, and I think it's worth talking about in relation to all the other stuff that this show is about. So yeah. All right. Well, I'll read the chat in a little bit. There's a couple more things I think I want to get to here. Oh yeah, at least like one more big thing. Maybe two. Okay, so I just want to talk about the body's role in the dissociated experience. And I think we are just we're in a cultural situation where we have a very sick relationship to energy in many ways, but I'm just going to talk about our personal relationships to energy in our own bodies, where many people live a pretty sedentary lifestyle. Many people also have like a gym oriented workout lifestyle that supplements that. But on the whole, I guess I want to start from this picture of like, in the past, not even necessarily evolutionarily speaking, but evolutionarily speaking, and then civilizationally speaking, until very recently, most people were working in order to achieve certain goals to sustain their physical being. And this is something that Ted Kaczynski talks about a lot. He talks about the way he conceives of this kind of thing is he talks about the power process. And I think I haven't reviewed that, but he, I didn't review it before the stream. He talks about the power process as this thing humans have where we need to be applying power in our lives to certain goals that we have in mind, and we need to be accomplishing some of those goals. Otherwise, we kind of wind up in this very sick state. And the way that life works for a lot of people now is you work at a job that is like in one isolated bubble, and your home is in an isolated bubble, and then you get your food from a grocery store, which is a part of a global logistics network that is incomprehensible to most people and is like a whole other different bubble. So that food is like also you're alienated from where your food even comes from, on top of having all of these bubbles. So what your power process looks like gets really like it's just like abstract. It's like, okay, well, I need to like say I want to have a family, and I need to eat food, and I need to pay my bills basically. So my plan is I'm going to go to work. Okay, well, I go to work and I get my paycheck, and it's like, okay, mission accomplished. But that's something that does not require actually like a creative experience of trying to solve your own problems. Most work for most people, I don't think, is actually super physically or intellectually stimulating in a positive way. It might be physically grueling, or it might be intellectually boring. I think that's more common. Anyway, so with just like with that in the back of your mind while I talk about this other stuff, it like we're in this dissociated mode, and you can't solve it without changing the way that you are like metabolizing energy, is how I would think of it now. Like and that is such a hard thing to actually practically do in our society. I feel like in the ideal scenario, you would need to be expending physical and mental energy to solve certain problems that are a matter of your survival, or that they play right back into your life and your goals for your life. Instead, it's all becoming abstract and it's all becoming low energy. Yeah. So on that note, I mean, I this wasn't going to be like an advice stream, but in the future, I do plan on kind of doing a lot of those because I've struggled with a lot of these problems over the course of my life, and I have found strategies for it. But I just want to abstractly lay out that it really is true that you need to find some sort of way to get your body moving. And when I say get your body moving, I'm actually thinking of like the inside of your body, like the energy producing cells of your body. I'm not like thinking like run down the street. I'm like, I mean, that's one way to get that energy production going. There's lots of ways to do it. But really what it's about is like, just like we're exploring all of the interior corridors of our mind, we also kind of need to explore all of the physical cells that are being neglected within our body. And we need to get them producing energy. We need to get them communicating with each other. So there's very much a physical side of all of this, even though I've mostly been talking about mental dissociation. Yeah, and then I'll end with one more little note, which is that is really hard to do because, like I've been saying, like I have this, despite having like friends and family that I'm close with, like the world that I live in is a world that is like forcing us all to be alone in certain ways. Like I would, like it, there's very little shared responsibility. We're all winding up in our apartments and we're all responsible for our own rents. And this isn't like a this isn't not a call for communal living or anything. It's just it's more or like, you know, in the way that it exists in our society now. It's more a call for like living with each other deliberately, not with literally, but just like we're here on the planet, we are with each other on the planet. And I feel like that requires some level, like for people actually in our friend groups and in our families, like that requires some level of like we are here, we're going to die at some point, and we're in a scenario that is sort of, we're in a scenario that's really trying to break everybody down. And whether that's intentional or not, it is happening. People are getting broken down, people are getting addicted to drugs, homeless crisis. There's so much shit happening in this specific nation, not to speak of others. And so it's sort of like I'm thinking about this task in my own life where it's like how can I, without, you know, like it's just not an option to create like a village of my friends or something. So I'm not thinking like that. I'm just thinking, how can we actually support each other like in a concrete, practical way that prevents us from falling by the wayside as the years move on and become more taxing, and increasingly people are feeling even worse. So yeah, and I think that the more we're dissociating, the harder it is to think of those solutions. And to speak of solutions for a minute, like the intellectual work we need to do is like nil. Like we need to learn how to engage with the intellectual work of people of the past, whether it was 2 months ago or 2,000 years ago, older, in the middle. Like there is intellectual, like everything has been thought of. There's such an incredible history of human culture all over the globe that we have to learn from. And I think we have to help each other survive and like thrive basically enough that we are actually able to engage and ask questions of the whole history of human culture in a way that those answers can start to reinforce the way that we're actually living our lives and increasingly supporting each other, building stronger bonds. So yeah, I mean that's kind of I do feel forced to be alone. It is, or people are saying in the chat as well. And we've got to stop that. So Yeah, so I'm going to zoom in on this castle real quick, and then I'll read a little bit of this Buddhist thing that I think is good. So this is the interior castle. She did not make this diagram. I don't think. I think it was made by Father Pascal Purini. But pretty damn cool. So yeah. Anyway, it's like these are mansions within which people move, and you get closer and closer to the middle. And you can also be outside the castle. You can also be outside the castle entirely. Um, anyway, it's pretty interesting. I mean, if people want to keep hanging out, I could read some of it later. But hang on. Okay. Yeah, do upload some cognitive aerobics books. I would check them out. You should leave them in the leave it in the comments for all future viewers. Oh, and if you haven't, like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Helps me out. It's been going well. Everything. It's pretty fun to look at the YouTube statistics, and they're going up. So that's always nice when people are watching, even when you're not doing a stream like over the weekend. So it's cool. We've got a lot to talk about. So, but not really today. I'm just gonna read a little bit of this. Yeah, I'll read two sections of this because it's just good. Um, so someone just got here and has no idea what this is. So I just gave kind of a monologue on a bunch of stuff, but now I'm gonna read from a Buddhist text. That is the plan for the new viewer. Feel free to go back or just hang out. But yeah, I'm just gonna read this thing here about controlling the mind. And well, yeah, I guess the context for this for everybody, I mentioned it, but the way that I was talking about how those influences of society are like breaking us down, keeping us alone, dissociating us, desensitizing us. I think the vectors by which that actually occurs in our lives, I think we can sort of shield ourselves from those vectors through some of these types of practices. So I used to carry this like little booklet around with me that had this in it. I forgot it at my friend's house in Montreal, and hopefully I can get it in the future. And I don't even remember where I found it. I think someone might have literally just handed it to me on the street one time. It's the Buddha's Last Bequest. I don't think it's in all the like canonical Buddhist collections, but it is, I'm pretty sure it's ancient or at least medieval. And I think these sorts of techniques can kind of can be used to help us block that out and then focus on recovering the capabilities of our interior life. So, all right, and there's a few words in here that I'm just gonna skip because they're translated a little weird into English here, or like Dharma. I think it's usually translated as Dharma, but in this it is Dhamma. And yeah, there's there's some other stuff that the words might not be the typical English translation, but anyway. All right, so here we go. Exhortation on the control of mind and body. O disciples, if you are able already to keep within the precepts, you must next control the five senses, not permitting the entry of the five sense desires by your unrestraint, just as a cowherd, by taking and showing his stick, prevents cows from entering another's field, ripe for the harvest. In an evildoer indulging the five senses, his five desires will not only exceed all bounds, but will become uncontrollable, just as a wild horse, unchecked by the bridle, must soon drag the man leading it into a pit. There's a bunch of really good analogies in this. If a man be robbed, his sorrow does not extend beyond the period of his life, but the evil of that robber, the sense desires in this case, and the depredations caused by him bring calamities extending over many lives, creating very great dukkha, which is suffering, I think. You should control yourselves. And this is kind of funny to read after talking about desensitization, because the default in our society is desensitization. And here now I'm talking about how, like, control of those senses is important. So it almost seems like being desensitized is a good thing. However, when you're less aware of your senses, he's talking here also about these sense desires. So the sense desires are these robbers that come through the senses, say something like lust or greed. Like these are sensory things that they those still come into your life even when you are desensitized. However, when you are, say you're highly depressed or something and the senses are extremely weak, those things don't actually tend to bother you, but you are still afflicted by negative thoughts or like suicidal thoughts and things like that. Anyway, hence, wise men control themselves and do not indulge their senses, but guard them like robbers who must not be allowed freedom from restraint. If you do allow them freedom from restraint, before long you will be destroyed by Mara. The mind is the lord of the five senses, and for this reason you should well control the mind. Indeed, you ought to fear indulgence of the mind's desires more than poisonous snakes, savage beasts, dangerous robbers, or fierce conflagrations. No simile is strong enough to illustrate this danger. But think of a man carrying a jar of honey, who, as he goes, heeds only the honey and is unaware of a deep pit in his path. Or think of a mad elephant, unrestrained by shackles. Again, consider a monkey who, after climbing a tree, cannot, except without difficulty, be controlled. Such as these would be difficult to check, therefore hasten to control your desires and do not let them go unrestrained. Indulge the mind with its desires, and you lose the benefit of being born a man. Check it completely, and there is nothing you will be unable to accomplish. That is the reason, O disciples, why you should strive hard to subdue your minds. Exhortation on the moderate use of food. I'll skip this one because there's some that are really specific to attention and the interior mind. So I'll read this one because I feel like it relates to dopamine and pleasure and motivation. So the exhortation on sleeping. O disciples, by day you should practice good dharma and not allow yourselves to waste time. By the early evening and late at night, do not cease to make an effort. While in the middle of the night, you should chant the sutras to make yourself better informed. Do not allow yourselves to pass your lives in vain and fruitlessly on account of sleep. You should envisage the world as being consumed by a great fire and quickly determine to save yourselves from it. Do not spend much time in sleep. The robbers of the three afflictions forever lie in wait to kill men, so that your danger is even greater than in a household rent by hatred. So, fearful, how can you sleep and not arouse yourself? These afflictions are a poisonous snake asleep in your own hearts. They are like a black cobra sleeping in your room. Destroy the snake quickly with the sharp spear of keeping the precepts. Only when that dormant snake has been driven away will you be able to rest peacefully. If you sleep, not having driven it away, you are men without shame. The clothing of shame among all ornaments is the very best. Shame can also be compared to an iron goad that can control all human wrongdoing, for which reason, O disciples, you should always feel ashamed of unskillful actions. You should not be without it, even for a moment, for if you are parted from shame, all merits will be lost to you. He who has fear of blame has that which is good, while he who has no fear of blame is not different from the birds and beasts. I'll do the, I'll skip to... Okay, so then there's just a few more I'll read, and these kind of get more into attentiveness, collectedness, and wisdom, and idle talk, which is one of my favorite ones. So... okay. Okay, so here's part 3, or section 3 is on the advantages for great men gone forth to homelessness. So part 1, the virtue of few wishes. O disciples, you should know that those having many desires, by reason of their desire for selfish profit, experience much suffering. Those with few desires, neither desiring nor seeking anything, do not therefore experience such suffering. Straightway lessen your desires. Further, in order to obtain all kinds of merit, you should practice fewness of desires. Those who desire little do not indulge in flattery so as to sway another's mind, nor are they led by their desires. Those who practice the diminishing of desires thus achieve a mind of contentment, having no cause for either grief or fear, and finding the things they receive are sufficient, never suffer from want. From this cause, indeed, comes nirvana. Such is the meaning of having few wishes. The virtue of contentment. O disciples, if you wish to escape from all kinds of suffering, you must see that you are contented. The virtue of contentment is the basis of abundance, happiness, peace, and seclusion. Those who are contented are happy even though they have to sleep on the ground. Those who are not contented would not be so, even though they lived in celestial mansions. Such people feel poor even though they are rich, while those who are contented are rich even in poverty. The former are constantly led by their 5 desires and are greatly pitied by the contented. Such is the meaning of contentment. The virtue of seclusion. O disciples, seek the joy of quietness and passivity. Avoid confusion and noise, and dwell alone in secluded places. Those who dwell in solitude are worshipped with reverence by Saka and all celestials. This is why you should leave your own and other clans to live alone in quiet places, reflecting to develop insight upon suffering, its arising and its cessation. Those who rejoice in the pleasures of company must bear as well the pains of company, as when many birds flock to a great tree, it may wither and collapse. Attachment to worldly things immerses one in the suffering experienced by all men, like an old elephant bogged down in a swamp from which he cannot extricate himself. Such is the meaning of secluding oneself. Okay, and then we're getting more into, here we're getting into more of the realm of what we were talking about earlier. O disciples, if you strive diligently, nothing will be difficult for you. As a little water constantly trickling can bore a hole through a rock, so must you always strive energetically. If the mind of a disciple becomes idle and inattentive, he will resemble one who tries to make fire by friction, but rests before the heat is sufficient. However much he desires fire, he cannot make even a spark. Such is the meaning of energetic striving. And I think about that in relation to the reading every day and memorizing poetry thing we were talking about, and how that ultimately changes how you think. But again, it's a process, and it's not something that, like, you don't memorize one poem one day and, well, it does change how you think, but it doesn't give you any inertial security. It doesn't give you the security of, like, stability, or, like, it doesn't protect you from just getting pushed back to where you were the next day. However, when you do strive energetically to do these things, like day after day, day in and day out, that is where the change really starts to show up over time. All right, so the virtue of attentiveness. O disciples, seek out a noble friend. Seek him who will best be able to aid you in developing the unexcelled and unbroken attention. If you are attentive, none of the 3 robbers, the afflictions, can enter your mind. That is why you must keep your mind in a state of constant attention, for by loss of attention you lose all merits. If your power of attention is very great, though you fall among conditions favoring the 5 robbers of the sense desire, you will not be harmed by them, just as a warrior entering a battle well covered by armor has nothing to fear. Such is the meaning of unbroken attention. And that's also very much what we were talking about, because where he says the conditions favoring the 5 robbers of sense desire, that is the world that we live in. Like we're addicted to phones. We're addicted to, and what are phones? They're giving us audio and video. Those are, that's our senses. That is like a literal robber of attacking our sense desires. So, or it is a robber of sense desire attacking us. So yeah, and the phones aren't going away. The people who have totally normalized phones aren't going to stop using them. And we just need to armor ourselves so that when we go out in the society, we're not just getting destroyed by those things, or we're not letting ourselves engage with that desire to do that. Because when you are using the phone, we've gone over it, it hurts you. It makes you less able to think. It furnishes your imagination for you. It reduces your capacity to imagine because it gives you all the images that you need for imagining. It gives you sounds that you need for imagining. So yeah, this is I haven't read this. So I'm reading The Buddha's Last Bequest right now. This is not my writing. And yeah, we're taking damage out in the world, and you need armor. And that armor, there's a lot of potential for that armor to be your mental attention. Like there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of building we can do from there. Okay, and the text continues to build. So it moves from attention to collectedness. So when you have attention I think of as a tool that you can focus on things around you, and you can strengthen this instrument so that it's able to focus more intensely on one thing or another. I think music is a very interesting thing to focus your attention on, because it is not, it doesn't take on physical form like your sight does. Like you may be very familiar with the way that music is made, so you may imagine people playing the music, but again, you're making that up. And when you don't know that, I've been a musician since I was a child, so I actually sometimes wonder what it's like to be a person who doesn't actually, well, I wonder what it's like to be a person who doesn't have that background and listen to music. However, I kind of get that experience listening to electronic music, because, or like purely like maybe experimental or just purely synthesized music that does not necessarily resemble any instruments that we actually have. Because then when you're trying to like put your attention on those sounds and disentangle the sounds and think of them as coming from their different sources, perhaps, then you wind up in a weird territory of like, how am I even like conceiving of this sensory information? So that's what I think of as attention. Like it's the instrument that we have to build and have to practice on in order to use. And then we move to collectedness. So I'll talk about collectedness after I read it. So the virtue of collectedness. O disciples, if you guard your mind, so guarded the mind will remain in a state of collectedness. If your minds are in a state of collectedness, you will be able to understand the arising and passing away of the impermanent world. For this reason, you should strive constantly to practice the various stages of absorption. When one of these stages of collectedness is reached, the mind no longer wanders. A disciple who practices to attain collectedness is just like an irrigator who properly regulates his dikes. As he guards water, even a small amount, so should you guard the water of wisdom, thereby preventing it from leaking away. Such is the meaning of collectedness. So, yeah. So it's just I like the image of the irrigator regulating dikes for a farm. Like that I haven't read this in a long time. Actually, it was totally kind of random that I'm reading this right now. I was just like, I need to think of something that's probably relevant. I didn't review it. But it's like pretty spot on with where we were earlier. So also for the new people in the watching the live stream, I do this Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 9. Anyways, so yeah, so we were talking about having this armor out in society that protects you from taking damage from the way that our situation is set up here. And similarly, the idea of collectedness is a way to gauge how much damage is really being inflicted. Because if you can hone a real collectedness, then you're aware of when even a small amount of water is lost because you are collected. And that may seem abstract. That may seem like a state that you can't actually achieve. I've had moments where I've felt like that, but here's the thing, and here's how it relates all the way back to the concept of changing your equipment as you develop, like changing your means for thinking as you change what you do with your life. And thus you're able to experience different things. The world itself actually changes. So when you really practice that attention, you just eventually reach these levels of collectedness. So that is something that you can't predict what that is actually going to feel like. Similar to having a smartphone and switching to a flip phone, you can't actually understand what the difference is going to feel like until you do it and you have that flip phone for a month and you haven't had a smartphone for a month, because then your mind changes, your mind decalibrates, your mind recalibrates to the world instead of the world where you always have your phone. All right, so yeah, the story ones are pretty funny. All right, so the virtue of wisdom, there's two more. The virtue of wisdom. O disciples, if you have wisdom, then do not hunger to make a display of it. Ever look within yourselves so that you do not fall into any fault. In this way, you will be able to attain freedom from the tangle of the interior and exterior spheres of senses and sense objects. If you do not accomplish this, you cannot be called Dharma practicers, nor yet are you common persons clad in white, so there will be no name fit for you. Wisdom is a firmly bound raft which will ferry you across the ocean of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Again, it is a brilliant light with which to dispel the black obscurity of ignorance. It is a good medicine for all who are ill. It is a sharp axe for cutting down the strangling fig tree of the afflictions. That is why you should, by the hearing wisdom, thinking wisdom, and development wisdom, increase your benefits from Dharma. If you have insight stemming from the development of wisdom, though your eyes are but fleshly organs, you will be able to see clearly into your own citta. I don't know what that is. Maybe soul? I'm not sure. Such is the meaning of wisdom. But yeah. But I like that sentence. This is why you should, by the hearing wisdom, thinking wisdom, and development wisdom. Those are hyphenated. Thinking wisdom, hearing wisdom, development wisdom. You increase your benefits from the Dharma. So that plays into, like, to use an example from earlier in the stream, that's like the memorizing of the poetry. That is a practice that you're doing that is increasing that wisdom. Yeah. And so those are the sorts of, our task is kind of to discover what all of those things are for ourselves and for our friends, and to hold each other to actually get us to the point where we are protecting ourselves and enriching our lives and setting up for a future that is going to be even, I don't want to just say worse, but a future that could be much more dangerous. Like for now we at least have we still have an internet that we can find a lot of information on. The internet might not always be here. There may be like a ground war in the United States at some point. There's just so much that really, like, we should be attempting to be able to deal with in our lives. And if we're mentally incapacitated through our normalized behaviors with phone use, then we're going to be fucked. So last one, this is my favorite. This is maybe my favorite. The virtue of restraint from idle talk. O disciples, if you indulge in all sorts of idle discussions, then your mind will be full of chaotic thoughts, and though you have gone forth to homelessness, you will be unable to attain freedom. That is why, O disciples, you should immediately cease from chaotic thoughts and idle discussions. If you want to attain the happiness of nirvana, you must eliminate completely the illness of idle discussion. You know, I'm grateful for the people printing and hand-making freaky books. It might be nice to, since I don't have a physical one of these anymore, it'd be kind of cool to get one of those. Anyway, so yeah, the virtue of restraint from idle talk. So idle talk here, in our situation, again, all of these texts need to be understood in our own situation. I think these texts are kind of eternal for a reason. They speak to a human condition that we are also in. And our idle talk is often it's not even two-way conversation. Nor is it even really conversation at all. I mean, people, we said last week, are like listening to voices all the time. I mean, you guys are listening to my voice right now. I'm also listening to it. So like idle talk for me has become, the way I conceive of idle talk is all kinds of media interaction. So that could be watching TV or scrolling, or it can even be reading, really. Like reading is not, necessarily a pure activity. It can be done in avoidance of something. It can also, you could be reading stuff that sucks. I don't know. Anyway, so if you indulge in all sorts of idle discussions, so if you're engaging flippantly with media, or flippantly is not the word, but if you're engaging carelessly with lots of media every day, and you're letting that change who you are over time, then your mind will be full of chaotic thoughts. And those chaotic thoughts, we're trying to have collectedness. We're trying to know what our thoughts are. We're trying to understand. We're trying to light up the interior architecture of our minds. And that becomes very difficult the more chaotic thoughts you have. I recommend like, I mean, if you're scrolling or if you're watching something tonight, I mean, you could even do it right now with the stream. You could turn it off, turn all the lights off, and just like lay in silence with your eyes closed, or sit in silence with your eyes closed, and see what from that media comes to your mind first and second and third, because things from all over the day are just going to pop in. And then of course it's not just about media. At the time that this was being written, it was about talk with people in your life. And that's something that we get so little of now, that also seems like very healthy, or like it's like seems like something to strive for, but it's also something we have to be careful of, because if every time we're talking to people, it's just idle, it's unintentional, and maybe it's shallow or it's gossipy, then again, it's just filling our mind with chaotic thoughts, and it's not protecting us from anything, and it's not preparing us for anything, and it's not strengthening us. So anyway, I mean, that's all I wanted to read in here. The whole thing's good. It's very short. It's like I used to carry around just a tiny little pamphlet of it, like, like something like that. And all right, so I'll take a look at the chat here. Oh, someone wanted me to elaborate on talkings for liars. Well, that's kind of what I mean. However, in the context that I brought that up, maybe, or in the context that I usually think about that in, well, yeah, it's liars as in maybe like not seeking the truth. Like truth is not the object of that conversation. And I don't mean talking in general, but a type of talk. And so I would describe this maybe with relation to like, I mean, like, I don't know, a popular one would be like 9/11 or something. It's just the first thing coming to mind. But you know how much people talk about 9/11, but they also like don't really like care to actually get to the bottom of it. that's sort of a talkings for liars thing. And they might talk about it all day, but it's like if you're just casually like, and they might try to relay everything they ever heard about it or everything that they personally believe about it, and yet it's like, okay, so like why are you telling me this? Like, shouldn't like it, unless it's actually rigorously put together and holds water. It's kind of like, bro, what are we doing here? Like, why are we talking about 9/11 right now? And I think it's worth talking about when you're actually intentionally talking about it and seeking the truth with respect to it. But yeah, so that's kind of what I mean. But that has to go. That can have to do with lots of things. It could have to do with gossip. Yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. Or someone says, I love how I probably wouldn't have heard these lectures had I not stumbled upon you in Chinatown. That kind of serendipity really helps me in the light of the midst of intense depressive spirals. And yeah, I agree, and I think that is like that is so helpful to me. All of the serendipity that does come together when you start um, trying to do things can really help, especially just like, I don't know, the attitudes that you wind up honing or trying your best to hone by reading things like this can really make a difference in your life, and can I don't know. And I'm not like, I regret tons of interactions that I've had in recent time, but I'm glad that I'm increasingly getting my compass together to know where to go in my social interactions with people. And yeah, I think it is creating a nice little community. We'll see what the show turns into over time. I mean, I'm excited actually. I mean, in the future I will talk about things like 9/11. I will there's a whole historical dimension of the show that I probably won't get to for like at least a month, because there's just so much sociological bullshit to get out of the way, so we can at least kind of have a better sense of what we're standing on when we start to look at history. But that's something I want to get into. So yeah. Um, and yeah, that is a good description of the talkings for liars thing. Speculating as as a limp means of flexing, and because it's a yeah, because those conversations, they are like flexing. It's just kind of like, it's like, bro, that's what I mean when I'm saying like, bro, why are you talking about, like, why are you name dropping all this stuff about 9/11 right now? Like, I don't have my notebook out. Like, you're just flexing, and you probably don't even know what you're talking about. Some people know what they're talking about, but not most random people who are going to start talking to you about 9/11 are the ones you should be taking notes on or anything, or like, I don't know, other stuff in that vein. So let's see. I'm gonna go look back in the chat a little bit, because it was kind of active tonight, kind of popping off tonight. While I'm reading the chat, if anything anyone shared in here, like, feel free to comment it on the video, because it will just go away. But there's stuff I don't know. I try to take notes on the chat. Like, people are mentioning movies and stuff that I should check out, and I do write that stuff down. But I would actually see it more. It would actually be a more helpful reference in a comment on the video, because then it can just live there. What do we got? Someone was asked why they continue to live under the negative strains of city life, and their reply was that as a creative person, the pressure is like compressing coal. That's funny. Yeah, we should talk about meditation and prayer. All three of us, actually. That would be cool. Oh yeah, you should send me some bioenergetic exercises as techniques for inner movement. I'm curious what you mean by that. Or well, I kind of know what you mean, but I would like to know specifically what you mean. There's an old film there's an old film reel from the 50s about how bad posture creates a negative ladder effect of energy. That's true. I don't know if it's created with the posture, but that it well, I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that it originates with the posture, but it is I don't know. I've been thinking so much about posture, similar to the voice, where it's like, oh, my voice is turned into something I didn't know what it was. It just like got so weak. Same thing happens with your posture, and then you're just walking fucked up and slouched over. So, all right. Yep. Subscribe and hit the bell. I'm live at 9 Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, so I'll link in the description. I'll put the text that I read too, because I also brought up this Saint Teresa of Avila one. I didn't read anything from it, but I'll since people are still here, I'll read something from it that I thought was kind of funny. I mean, it's funny because it's true. Okay, so this thing is I showed the diagram earlier up close, but for now I'll just read a little bit, because I'll pull it up one more time. So I'm not going to read, or this is not by her. This is just about her. It's written by this guy, I'm pretty sure, Pascal Purini, Father Pascal Purini. And it is, I don't know if maybe English is not his first language, or there's lots of typos, but there's some weird kind of like grammar stuff. So what's going on here is, this is one of her conceptions of interiority. It's the interior castle, and it's describing our relationship to the inner life's relationship to prayer. So I think prayer is kind of how you enter into these mansions. So these are all levels, basically, or the first mansions, the second mansions, the third mansions, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here we have the interior senses and the imagination, and here we have the intellect and will. And I wonder if these are placed here deliberately, because it sort of implies that these things only show up as you're getting out of the second mansions into the third mansions, which does kind of like, that is kind of what it feels like, honestly. Not to say I'm like in the third mansion, I feel, but like the second one says things that are familiar to me. And I feel like it does correspond to an increased understanding of my intellect and will and imagination and my interior senses and everything. And you've got the world, the flesh, and the devil as these vipers trying to get you when you're in there. And these waves here, the diverse ways, just indicates that there's many ways to Jesus Christ, and many paths through this castle. All right, so with that in mind, I'll read a couple of these. All right, so I'll read the little description, but then I'll just do the first. I'll do the people outside the castle, and then I'll do the first 3 mansions, because it does correspond to this sense of like, how does the inner life develop over time, or what is it capable of? And this is Saint Teresa was from the 1500s, born in 1515. So the introduction to this is she quite expectedly shows herself conversant with the analogy of a castle, which she employs to reveal the wonders of the interior life and the means that lead to the perfection thereof. Successfully, she is able to invest the principal elements of her thought with the features of her comparison. Even the enemies of the soul provide a clever integral detail, for they are, quote, the reptiles and other creatures to be found in the outer court of the castle. And she says, I think this is a quote of her. Let us now turn to our castle with its many mansions. You must not imagine these mansions as arranged in a row, one behind the other, but fix your attention on the center, the room or palace occupied by the king. Think of a palmetto, which has many outer rinds surrounding the savory part within, all of which must be taken away before the center can be eaten. Just so around this central room are many more, as there are also above it. In speaking of the soul, we must always think of it as spacious, ample, and lofty, and this can be done without the least exaggeration, for the soul's capacity is much greater than we can realize, and this sun, which is in the palace, reaches every part of it. That's like an example of one of the typos. It says something weird there, but there's typos all through this thing. But yeah, that's also just highly relevant. I think reading this the other night is why I wanted to do a stream on interiority, because I've had a struggle with interiority. Like when I was depressed and dissociated, I just thought I was retarded straight up. Like I just thought I had like a really like tenuous grasp of my mental faculties, but it was just all this other shit in my life that was beating me down until I had very little potential. So now that I've like been able to revitalize myself after years of that, it is I don't know. It's definitely important to talk about. So anyway, here's some traits of those persons outside the castle. And so this is no longer Saint Teresa of Avila. This is a summary. So he's probably using some of her words, but in translation. And yeah. Anyway, they're just like lists. It's like, okay, outside. Okay, the first mansion. Here's some qualities of those people. So some traits of those persons outside the castle. They are not friends with God. They are in sin. They very seldom pray sincerely, if ever. They are totally taken up in worldly affairs. We see a connection there with the idle talk and the other Buddhist, other things from the Buddhist text. They avoid hardship and seek pleasure in all. That connects to the Buddhist energetic striving. If you're avoiding hardship, you're not energetically striving. They are concerned about themselves only. They very seldom, if ever, help others unless for their own good. They are very critical of regular churchgoers and of established religion. All right, so we could say that they appear to be not yet a God-fearing person. Many freely do wrong, but it does not seem to bother their conscience, either because of a lack of training in their faith or because their God seems too far away and irrelevant to their lives. They are busy enjoying the things made by God, but they do not reflect that this is why these things are enjoyable. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. They may complain against the Lord. This is already the beginning of prayer. The door is opening when they complain against the Lord. Also outside the castle are the soul's three enemies: the world, the flesh, the devil. As we have noted above, St. Teresa calls these enemies and the temptations that ensue from them snakes, vipers, and poisonous creatures. Either by God's permission for the soul's merit, or because of the soul's folly and neglect of vigilance, these enemies may enter into the castle, exclusive of the last mansion. So even when you're in those early mansions, you're still at risk. Yeah, do not let these guys in our castle. Their access to the first three mansions is particularly dangerous, as the union between God and the soul becomes more personally intimate and loving. It is to be expected that the devil will display a more personal interest and hatred toward this creature rising so near his lost place in God's affection. By his intervention, the devil demonstrates his unspeakable personal hatred for God, who so loves, and the soul, who is so beloved. All right. So the door of entry into this castle is prayer and reflection. This leads to a spiritual conversion. So some traits of some persons in the first mansions. Some traits of some persons in the first mansions. These people are now in the state of grace. They have good intentions. They try sincerely to avoid mortal sin, yet they do not avoid the occasions of mortal sin. The occasions of mortal sin, like the circumstances. Like in the Buddhist text, it talks about avoiding the environments that permit, or the conditions that permit, the temptations of the sense desires. So they're not avoiding the occasions of it. They pray sincerely a few times a month. They are still very much absorbed in worldly affairs. They are in semi-darkness due to their shortcomings. They strive to give up unnecessary things and business affairs. They fall into sin occasionally, but recover humbled. These new converts are now a God-fearing people, filled with zeal for the Lord. They witness to others how God touched their lives and saved them from lives of sin. They are filled with gratitude for God. So I'll do 2 more mansions, unless you really want to know what's in the fourth ones. So some traits of some persons in the second mansions. Now they avoid even the occasions of serious sin. They realize that more effort is required to progress. They can now recognize the call of the Lord in other good people, in moving sermons, in reading good books, in times of illness and trials, in good events of life, in truth and prayer. They can draw some good from all events. They realize the devil is working to prevent their progress. They pray many vocal prayers and began to meditate. They still keep company with bad companions, in quotes. They're determined to carry the cross, lose life even. They grow spiritually from falls into old sins. For St. Teresa, bad companions were those who had not yet received the grace of conversion and were still following the old values of not fearing God. All right, some traits of some persons in the third mansions. Now they strive to avoid committing venial sin. They spend hours in meditation, recollection, and simplified prayer. They have a well-regulated way of life, time well used. They do not let devotions interfere with their duties of life. They can now see better how religion and life fit together nicely. They practice works of charity and love doing penance. They enjoy a simplified prayer of recollection. They use much less meditation, less reasonings. They have a simplified use of the imagination. Their senses obey better. They have a simple gaze. They have a deeper general awareness of God. They still use regular meditation from time to time. They enjoy the sweetness of the Lord much more. They think they have much virtue and are very discouraged when they fall. They are restless if despised or lose their reputation in any way. They have become conscious of their virtue and take a false pride in it. When trials come, sometimes they fall, or sometimes they fail, and then become very depressed. They are in a jumbled state, so holy but so weak. Why? They need further purification. They have not arrived. In the first 3 mansions, the souls must work, with the aid of ordinary grace, to become Christ-like in virtue, thought, and desire. These 3 mansions, or degrees of perfection, are dispositive. I think when he's saying they're dispositive, he means it has to do with our personal disposition to begin with. Like, we're sort of disposed to wind up in one or the other, and then to get into the deeper ones, it requires much more intense work. It has little to do with your initial disposition. That's how I interpreted that sentence. These 3 mansions or degrees of perfection are dispositive. So, but in the fourth mansions, the grace of the God-man intervenes more directly, discernibly, and gratuitously, to introduce the soul to a wholly supernatural knowledge of God, experiential knowledge. This knowledge and consequent love is the beginning of the transformation of the soul, by which it will be led through the succeeding mansions to the most perfect divine union, spiritual marriage. What is the, in the chat, what's the wedding feast? All right, so from the drawing, it will be noted that the first 2 mansions may be traversed the most quickly, granting that the soul is faithful and does not turn back or dawdle on the way, because the third mansions is a state in which the soul must become rooted in well-regulated habits of virtue to achieve Christ-likeness. It is reasonable to suppose that this will entail the longest period of time. So that's that. And I guess, I'll just do the fourth mansions. I won't do the rest because it just gets kind of intense. So the fourth mansion, some traits of persons in the fourth mansions. Many times they experience God as darkness, like St. John of the Cross. They now have an awareness of particular help from God to pray. They still have to, yeah, here's where some typos are. Like, they still have to personally prepare, but the prayer is a gift. I don't know. Their first kind of prayer, an interior recollection felt in the soul. This naturally leads them to the prayer of quiet or divine taste. They have a restlessness as people learn, as they learn to become more passive. They now avoid the occasions of deliberate venial sin. Their virtues are stronger, so they fail less often. They experience an interior joy in the intellect, not to be confused with the old devotion of the emotions. They have many new insights to truths of faith, scriptures, etc. Their great meekness is caused by the realization that all is from God. They have a sense of God indwelling. It can pervade the whole day and night. Some are afraid to stir or move at first, yet St. Teresa says God needs works. St. John, more harm than good can come in ministry before the fourth mansions. So if you're doing ministry before the fourth mansions, I guess St. John of the Cross says more harm than good can come. You should at least get to that point. All right, so I'll call that reading there. However, there's two things in that one that remind me of something I didn't talk about, and they experience an interior joy in the intellect, and they have many new insights to truths. So that is something that I also just want to emphasize. This is a good note to end on, I think, because it feels so good to think and to have freedom of thought and to actually reclaim your interiority from the abuse that it is suffering over the course of our entire lives. Like, it feels good. It feels like you're able to think in deeper ways than you thought possible. And I mean, really, like, the way that this whole the further mansions go, it is incredible to think about what the mind is capable of experiencing. And yeah, that's just something I want to emphasize, because it's like we should be striving for that pleasurable clarity of thought, where it is like, okay, I really am alive. I don't feel dead at all. I don't feel like the grayscale SSRI commercial phase anymore, which I think is the norm for a lot of us. And I think that is why certain drug use like winds up, not even SSRIs, but clearly SSRIs are an example. But I was thinking more of just like weed or even coffee sometimes for people. It's like, I just have to get out. I just have to get out of this grayscale mode. All right, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's getting late. Been like almost 2 hours. So yeah, but people are still watching. So I do really appreciate that. If you haven't liked the video yet, please like it, subscribe, hit the bell. I'm live 4 days a week, 4 nights a week. So it's been going good. We're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about sex. We're gonna talk about the birds and the bees on here this week. And we're gonna talk about dating apps and romantic love and the tricks that, or like how romantic love is. I don't know. It's very heavily emphasized in our society, and I think that is there's something a little suspicious about that. So we can get into what might be suspicious about that. And what else we got? Talk about food, nutrition. Natural flavors. Yeah, we're going to talk about the apps and the bees. Apps and the bees coming soon. I also want to talk about family and trauma and the development of the personality and degrees of personality disorders that can come into play in our lives, where we're acting in ways that are acting in ways where we don't want to be acting like that, and yet we're stuck because that's how our personality is formed. So I found a lot of help through understanding personality through various conceptions of it. Just getting more fluent with the concepts of personality helped me understand what was causing my depression and how to overcome it, causing social anxiety as well. So yeah. Oh yeah, Dan, if you want, now that I'm like set up like this and I have the mic and stuff, I would go on your radio show or whatever it is. That sounds fun. I think that should be pretty easy for me now. When we first talked about it, it sounded I was just intimidated by getting this stuff even set up in the first place. So yeah. Earlier, if nothing else, doing these streams has been getting me to practice, do some vocal exercises a few days a week, and I appreciate that. I was doing some sort of literary tongue twisters earlier from this book, A Drill Manual for Improving Speech. It's good. First, we polish off some batches of political dispatches, and foreign politicians circumvent. Then, if business isn't heavy, we may hold a royal levy or ratify some acts of parliament. Yeah, it's they're hard. Try saying that fast. Yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out for 2 hours. These are not usually 2 hours. Yeah, and let's hang soon. Have a good one. And yeah, I think, what do we got here? How long's it been? It's been a little over 2 hours. Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate all you guys for hanging out. And, okay, I thought you were saying real to being tired, but you're saying real to the acts of parliament. True. I'll do a couple more of these because they're funny, and also if you like one, you can memorize it tonight and then memorize another one tomorrow, and then you'll be well on your way to using 100% of your brain. What do we got? For today in this arena, summoned by a stern subpoena, Edwin, sued by Angela, shortly will appear. Times grew worse and worse with Rip Van Winkle as years of matrimony rolled on. A tart temper never mellows with age, and a sharp tongue is the only edged tool that grows keener with constant use. For a long while he used to console himself, when driven from home, by frequenting a kind of perpetual club of the sages, philosophers, and other idle personages of the village, which held its sessions on a bench before a small inn, designated by a rubicund portrait of His Majesty George III. You probably don't get that from listening to it, but I can feel the consonants. The intensity of how many consonants were in that paragraph. Yeah, I'm enthused about zoos, and zoos soothe Sue's nerves. A wonderful man was this Caesar. You are a writer and I am a fighter, but here is a fellow who could both write and fight, and in both was equally skillful. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. All right, cool. Well, I'll call it. I'll round this off. And I appreciate everyone for hanging out. Leave a comment, like it, subscribe, hit the bell, and come back tomorrow at 9. I'll talk about something. I guess I could have put a poll in the chat for whether we do sex or food or the family or whatever. But I'll just go off whatever I feel like. So, yeah, appreciate you, and have a great night.